I can still see it so clearly in my mind, like a scene frozen in time, though my heart still races whenever I replay it. That night wasn't supposed to be anything remarkable. I had chosen the restaurant because it was quiet, familiar, a place where the lighting was soft enough to relax me and the background music melted into the air like it had always belonged there. A night of solitude, a glass of wine, and maybe a plate of pasta to remind me that life could still feel normal, even when so much in my personal world had stopped making sense. The restaurant itself smelled faintly of roasted garlic and fresh bread. I remember watching the couples across the room laughing over inside jokes, and groups of friends leaning in close to whisper secrets, as if the walls themselves might be listening. I felt oddly invisible, tucked into my little corner. By the window, the rain drizzling outside and streaking the glass with silver lines. That invisibility, I thought, was comforting, safe. But as I would soon learn, nothing about that night was safe. She came to my table with the kind of careful steps that drew attention without meaning to. A young waitress, her face pale beneath the glow of the pendant lamps. There was something urgent in her eyes, though her smile tried to disguise it. At first, I thought she was simply refilling my water or bringing me the bread basket I had ordered. But then she leaned just slightly too close for comfort, and with a hand that trembled ever so slightly, she placed something near the edge of my plate. Not a menu, not a receipt, a folded slip of paper small enough to vanish if I looked away. She whispered something so faint I almost thought I imagined it. "Read this now." My stomach clenched, and the chatter of the room seemed to blur into background noise. Slowly, almost afraid of what I might find, I reached for the note. The paper was slightly damp, smudged as though written in haste. And the words "God." The words were scratched across the page in frantic, jagged lines. "I just saw my sister put something into your drink. At first, I couldn't breathe." My eyes darted to the glass of red wine in front of me, sitting there as innocent as ever, the condensation beating on the stem. A drink I had been about to taste, savor without the faintest suspicion. My fingers tingled as if they already knew that danger was inches from my lips. It was the kind of moment where the entire room shifts around you, where everything you thought was ordinary suddenly feels staged, like a trap. I looked back at the waitress. She was still standing there, her hands clasped tightly, her chest rising and falling faster than normal. She gave the smallest shake of her head. "Don't drink. Don't move on." Then she slipped away, leaving me paralyzed with questions. My first thought was confusion. Who was her sister? Why would she target me, of all people? I wasn't rich. I wasn't famous. I wasn't even surrounded by friends who could shield me. I was just me. But the fear that followed burned deeper. Was this random? Or was this personal? Every clink of cutlery around me sounded sharper. Every laugh from another table echoed like a mocking warning. And all the while, that glass sat there, glimmering under the restaurant lights, almost daring me to take a sip. I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady, my eyes scanning the room. Who looked nervous? Who avoided my gaze? Who seemed too calm, too calculated? My hands curled into fists under the table, because if what the note said was true, then right here in this very room sat someone who wanted to harm me, and they were close enough to touch my drink without me noticing. Have you ever felt your instincts scream at you before your mind fully processes the danger? That's exactly what happened. My whole body was alert, every muscle tight, like prey sensing the predator lurking in the shadows. I looked again at the note. The handwriting was rushed, uneven. It didn't feel like a prank. It felt desperate, like the writer didn't have time to explain more. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. This wasn't a coincidence. That waitress hadn't just chosen me at random. She knew what her sister had done, and she had risked everything to warn me, which meant whatever was happening was real. I sat frozen, but inside, questions clawed at me. Was this about money? Revenge? Jealousy? Had someone orchestrated this night to end with me collapsed on this very table, while everyone else carried on eating as though nothing had happened? And I need you listening to me now to understand why this story matters. Because danger doesn't always come charging at you in broad daylight. Sometimes it comes disguised as a friend offering you a drink. Sometimes it hides behind a smile, waiting for you to take one sip too many. And sometimes the only thing standing between you and disaster is a stranger's whispered warning. Before I tell you what I did next, I want you to pause and think. How often do we overlook small signs, dismiss instincts, or trust too easily simply because the setting feels safe? I almost became another headline, another tragic accident people would whisper about. And the only reason I didn't is because I paid attention. So if you're still with me, don't go anywhere. This story only grows darker, and the twist you'll hear will make you look twice at everyone who's ever stood near your glass. And while you're here, don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe, because you need to hear how this night unfolded. You won't believe what I discovered. Asterisk, my hands trembled beneath the table as if the note itself had poisoned me with fear. I couldn't decide what to do. First confront the waitress, call someone, or bolt out the door and leave everything behind. But leaving felt too obvious. If someone had gone to the trouble of slipping something into my drink, they were watching, waiting. And if I panicked, they'd know their plan had been discovered. So I forced myself to stay calm, even though my heart was slamming against my ribs. I picked up my fork and twirled the pasta on my plate, pretending as if nothing was wrong. But my eyes weren't on the food. They were scanning the room, every corner, every shadow, every flicker of movement. Who was she? Who was this sister that had decided tonight was the night to end my life, or at the very least, to ruin it? The tables blurred together at first. But then, as though fate wanted me to notice, my eyes caught something. A woman sitting just a few tables away, angled perfectly to watch me without drawing too much attention. She wasn't laughing like the others, not sipping her drink casually, or flipping through her phone. No, she was focused, her posture too stiff, her gaze too deliberate. And when our eyes met alone for a second, it was enough to send a chill through me. She looked away too quickly, pretending to stir her straw, her hands shaking ever so slightly. Could that be her? This sister? My mind raced. The resemblance between her and the waitress was faint, but there, the same jawline. The same nervous blink. And suddenly the note felt heavier in my pocket, as though it were proof I had no way of denying. I shifted, in my seat, pretending to adjust my napkin, but really I was inching my phone closer. Should I call the police? Would they even believe me? What would I see? A waitress gave me a note saying her sister poisoned my drink. They'd think I was paranoid, maybe drunk. Worse, what if the person behind this left before anyone arrived? I had to think quickly. And yet, quick decisions felt like walking on glass one wrong step. And it would all shatter. The wine glass sat there, mocking me. Its ruby surface shimmered in the dim light like an invitation, like temptation dressed in silk. Part of me wanted to push it away, to fling it to the floor and watch it shatter into pieces just to prove I was in control. But another part of me knew that might reveal too much too soon. Whoever was behind this needed to believe I was still unsuspecting. I leaned back, trying to look casual, but my body was tense, every nerve on edge. I caught the waitress's eye from across the room. She was avoiding me now, moving quickly between tables. But when her gaze finally met mine, she gave the faintest nod like confirmation. Yes, the danger was real. Yes, she meant every word. In that note, and that's when I felt it's the weight of the trap closing in. This wasn't random. This wasn't a joke. Someone in that room wanted me silenced. But why? The questions screamed louder than the chatter around me. Was this revenge for something I didn't know I had done? A business deal gone wrong? A jealous acquaintance family secrets surfacing in the most horrifying way. Its possibilities raced like wildfire, and each one burned hotter than the last. I tapped my phone screen beneath the table, sliding it open to the dial pad. My thumb hovered over 911, but I hesitated. I couldn't call attention to myself yet, not without proof. And that's when an idea began to form: dangerous, reckless. But maybe my only shot. If the drink was poisoned, then there had to be a way to prove it without letting it touch my lips. A way to stall. A way to trap the person who had set this in motion. I looked at the wine again, then at the servers weaving between tables. I could feign a spill. I could ask for a to-go cup. I could even offer it to the very person watching me and see if they dared to drink. But as I planned, the woman I had noticed earlier, the one who looked like the waitress, stood up. Slowly, too slowly. She reached for her purse, her chair scraping against the wooden floor, and my pulse quickened. Was she leaving? Escaping before I pieced it all together? Every instinct told me that if I let her go, I'd never know the truth. My body was stiff, my mind torn between two impulses: stay still and safe, or follow her into the storm. And here's the thing. We never know how strong we are until life corners us. That night I realized something terrifying and liberating all at once. I wasn't just someone sitting quietly at a restaurant anymore. I had become part of a game I hadn't chosen to play. And survival meant making a choice I wasn't ready to make. Before I tell you the decision, I took the one that changed the entire night and revealed the unthinkable. I need you to think about this. How well do you really know the people around you when you're out in public? How many strangers brush past you every single day? And what secrets do they carry in their pockets, in their hands, in their intentions? If you're still here with me, stay close. What happened next was darker, sharper, and far more shocking than even that note could have warned me about. And I promise you won't see the twist coming. Asterisk. The scrape of her chair against the polished wooden floor echoed louder in my ears than it should have. My eyes locked onto the woman as she stood, her movements deliberate, calculated, like someone who had already decided how the night would end. She adjusted the strap of her purse with a precision that felt rehearsed, as though she were concealing not just her belongings, but her intentions. Every instinct screamed at me not to let her go. If I stayed seated, if I let her slip into the night, I might never know why she or anyone wanted me harmed. But if I followed her, I was stepping straight into the unknown, into the trap she might have laid out. And yet something inside me whispered that this was my only chance. I reached for my napkin, laying it casually over the glass of wine, pretending as though I was simply done drinking. My fork clinked softly against the plate as I pushed it aside, buying myself just enough time to slip out of my seat without raising suspicion. The room was alive with chatter, forks against plates, and glasses clinking in a symphony of distraction. No one seemed to notice the storm brewing between me and the woman already moving toward the door. I stood, careful not to draw attention, and followed. My steps matched hers, steady but quiet, keeping the distance just enough that she wouldn't hear me over the soft jazz still humming through the speakers. My reflection flickered across the restaurant's windows as I trailed behind her, and for a moment I wondered if I looked as terrified as I felt. She reached the door, her hand pausing on the brass handle. For a second, I thought she'd turn back, catch me watching her, but she didn't. She pushed it open and disappeared into the drizzle-soaked night. The damp air rushed in, cool and sharp against my skin, as I stepped outside just seconds later. The city street was alive with neon reflections glistening in the rain-slick pavement. Cars hissed past, tires cutting through puddles. The woman's silhouette stood out against the glow of the street lamps as she walked briskly, heels clicking in rhythm with my pounding heartbeat. She didn't look back, not once, as though she was certain I wouldn't dare to follow, but I did. Every step felt heavier than the last, each one carrying the weight of a decision I couldn't undo. I could hear the echo of the waitresses. Warning in my mind, looping like a broken record. I just saw my sister put something into your drink. That note wasn't just a warning, it was a confession. A wedge between two sisters. One trying to save me, the other trying to destroy. The questions tormented me as I followed her down the block. Why me? Was I a random target, or did this tie back to something buried in my past, something I hadn't yet uncovered? The woman finally stopped beneath the awning of a darkened storefront, pulling her phone from her purse. I ducked behind a lamppost, the rain dripping down the back of my collar, my breath clouding in the cold. She was speaking into her phone, her voice low but urgent, the words muffled by distance. I strained to hear, leaning slightly, the adrenaline coursing through me like fire. Then a fragment, just enough to make my blood run cold. He almost drank it. Those words hit harder than any weapon. My knees weakened, my chest tightened. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She had said it herself. I was supposed to drink what she had poisoned. I was supposed to collapse in that restaurant. My life ended between forkfuls of pasta and sips of wine. I pressed myself against the cold metal of the lamppost, fighting the urge to confront her right then and there. But something stopped me. Maybe it was survival instinct. Maybe it was the awareness that she wasn't alone. Because just then, another figure appeared, taller, broader, stepping out of the shadows like he'd been waiting. He moved with the same deliberate calm, and when he placed a hand on her shoulder, she flinched. Whoever he wasn't just a bystander. My stomach turned as I realized the truth. This wasn't just one person trying to harm me. This was a plan, orchestrated, involving more than one set of hands. And if the sister had been bold enough to slip something into my drink, what were they planning next? I took a slow step back, retreating deeper into the shadows, careful not to make a sound. My mind raced. I couldn't confront them, not yet. I needed proof. I needed time. And above all, I needed to stay alive long enough to uncover why. As I turned, the city lights blurred through the rain, my reflection fractured in every puddle. I wasn't just running from danger anymore. I was running into a web I didn't understand. And every thread seemed to tighten around me. And to you listening, I'll say this. Trust isn't just fragile, it's lethal when placed in the wrong hands. That night, I discovered how quickly innocence can turn into a trap. And how a stranger's note can be the only thing standing between life and death. Stay with me. Because what I did next wasn't just about survival. It was about uncovering the truth they never expected me to see. And once I did, there was no going back. Asterisk, I slipped back into the restaurant with the rain still clinging to my hair, my coat damp against my shoulders. The warmth of the room hit me like a wave, but it didn't soothe me. The music was the same, the hum of conversation unchanged, yet the world I had stepped into no longer felt safe. It was like walking back into a theater where I already knew the actors were performing something sinister, something deadly, and the script had been written with me as the final casualty. The glass of wine was still there, sitting untouched beneath. The napkin I had left behind. Its presence was haunting, like a reminder of the fate I had barely escaped. People around me ate and laughed, oblivious to the storm that had nearly swallowed me whole just minutes earlier. I forced myself to move, carefully, deliberately, as though nothing had happened. If they suspected, I knew. If even a flicker of awareness crossed my face, I might lose the only advantage I had, not certainty. But I had one person in that building who had already crossed a line. Someone who had risked everything to warn me. The waitress. The sister who had chosen to save me. I caught her eye as she carried a tray of plates to another table. The moment our gazes met, she froze just for a second before forcing herself to keep moving. I knew then that she was scared. Not just for me, but for herself. And I had to move quickly before fear silenced her completely. When she passed by my table again, I whispered, "I need to talk to you now." She hesitated, her hand tightening around the tray, her eyes darting toward the bar where another waiter stood watching. Her sister, her accomplice. No, it didn't matter. I pressed on. I know what you wrote. And I saw her, outside, talking to someone. If you don't tell me what's going on, I'll walk straight to the police. That was enough. She swallowed. Hard, her face pale as paper, and leaned down as though she were refilling my water glass. Her voice was barely audible, trembling with urgency. You need to leave. You don't understand. She wasn't supposed to go this far. Her words cracked something open inside me. She wasn't supposed to go this far, which meant this wasn't random. This wasn't just a malicious prank. This was planned, calculated. And there were rules to it. Rules even she hadn't expected her sister to break. Then tell me why. I pressed, my voice low but sharp. Why me? What do you want from me? Her eyes shimmered with panic, her lips parting but no sound coming out at first. She glanced around the room again, as if the walls themselves were listening. Then, finally, a whisper. It's not about you, it's about someone you know. My breath caught in my throat. Someone I knew. A name hovered on the edge of my mind, but it was swallowed by the silence before I could grasp it. I opened my mouth to demand more, but she stood up straight, her face closing like a door. Please, she said louder now, forcing a smile for anyone watching. Enjoy your meal. And just like that, she walked away, her tray balanced perfectly in her hands, her back rigid as she disappeared toward the kitchen. I sat there, frozen, my pulse hammering in my ears. It wasn't about me. Those words echoed like a curse, twisting everything I thought I knew. Someone close to me, someone in my circle, had drawn me into this web. And the sister, the one outside in the rain, was simply the hand that delivered the poison. The thought made my stomach turn. I scanned the restaurant again, this time not for strangers, but for anyone who might be familiar. Had I missed a face, shadow I should have recognized? The questions piled up, suffocating me. But one thing was clear. If I didn't push harder, if I didn't tear the truth out of the cracks before they sealed shut, I might never know who had orchestrated this. And you're listening right now? I want you to think carefully. How well do you really know the people in your life? It's the ones you trust. Because sometimes the threat doesn't come from the stranger across the room. Sometimes it comes from a face. You recognize a name you know by heart. I wasn't ready for the truth yet, but the truth was ready for me. And it was coming faster than I could prepare for. Asterisk, the silence at my table felt unbearable. I stared at the untouched glass, the wine glinting like a trap, waiting to be sprung, while the waitress's words gnawed. At me? It's not about you. It's about someone you know, someone I knew. The phrase circled my mind like a vulture, picking at every memory, every face I'd trusted. The waitress had vanished into the kitchen, swallowed by swinging doors and clattering pans, leaving me alone with the growing storm. I couldn't sit still. My skin prickled with tension. My pulse quickened. I needed answers, and I needed them. Now I rose from my seat, pretending to head toward the restroom. But my path veered slightly, angling me closer to the kitchen entrance. The smell of garlic and butter grew stronger as I approached, but underneath it all was something else as sour, a metallic taste of dread rising in my throat. I slipped inside when no one was watching. The kitchen was alive with movement, pans sizzling, chefs shouting orders, plates being stacked and slid onto trays. And there she was, the waitress, her back pressed against a stainless steel counter. Her eyes darting toward me with a mixture of fear and guilt. "We can't talk here," she whispered, her hands clutching the hem of her apron. "If she sees us, I don't care." I cut in, my voice sharper than I intended. "You wrote that note. You stopped me from drinking it. You know more than you're saying. If you don't tell me now, I swear I'll drag the police in too. This kitchen, and you'll have to explain everything yourself." Her breath hitched, her face paling further. For a moment, I thought she might scream, but instead her shoulders sagged. as though she'd been carrying a weight too heavy to bear. "It wasn't supposed to be you," she whispered. "You weren't even supposed to be there tonight." She was waiting for someone else. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Not supposed to be me? I grabbed the counter for balance. "Who?" I demanded. "Who was the drink meant for?" She looked around wildly, her lips trembling. Then she leaned in closer, her voice trembling with a name I never expected to hear. "Your brother." My stomach lurched as if I'd been shoved into icy water. My brother. The person I had grown up with, fought with, laughed with, trusted without question. Why him? I target him. And worse, why was I sitting in the chair meant for him? The waitress's eyes filled with tears. "She thought you'd come with him. She thought the two of you were meeting here. When she saw you alone, she thought maybe." She shook her head. "I couldn't let it happen. I don't agree with her." I didn't know she would. Her words cut off abruptly as the kitchen door swung open and another server stepped inside. She straightened instantly, forcing a smile, her voice suddenly cheerful as she grabbed a plate of food. To anyone else, it looked normal. To me, it was a performance rehearsed under the threat of fear. I staggered back, my chest tight, my mind racing. My brother. All along the poison hadn't been for me. It had been meant for him. I stumbled back into the dining room, my legs heavy, my head spinning. I sank into my chair, staring again at the glass of wine I had nearly sipped. He had been here tonight, it would have been him. His laughter silenced, his life cut short while I sat beside him, helpless. But why? Why target him? What could he have done that would drive someone to this? And then I remembered the man outside. The one who had placed a hand on the sister's shoulder, his size, his presence, the way he moved it, wasn't random, wasn't just an accomplice. He was someone with power, someone used to pulling strings. It all began to click, but only in fragments. This wasn't a one-time attempt. This was part of something larger, something orchestrated with precision. And if I was sitting in my brother's seat tonight, then I had stumbled into a game I wasn't supposed to play. I pressed my shaking hands together, forcing myself to breathe. The waitress had given me enough to know I wasn't the target, but not enough to understand why. And that gap, that silence, was more dangerous than the poison in my glass, because now I knew the real story wasn't about me surviving. It was about why someone wanted my brother dead. And if you've stayed with me this far, you need to hear this, because what I uncovered next didn't just put me in danger. It tore apart everything I thought I knew about my family. And once the truth surfaced, there was no way to go back to who I was before. Asterisk, the name still echoed in my ears. My brother. The target wasn't me. It was never me. I could feel my pulse in my throat as I tried to process what the waitress had confessed, every nerve inside me trembling with disbelief. Why him? Why would anyone want to hurt him? He wasn't perfect, none of us are, but to be marked for death. I thought back to the man outside, the shadow, who had rested his hand on the sister's shoulder like he owned the night. His presence, his calm, his size, it wasn't just muscle, it was control. He looked like someone who knew how to arrange accidents, how to silence questions before they were asked. My brother had clearly crossed a line with the wrong people. But what line? I pressed my palms into my lap, my thoughts spiraling back to all the things my brother had kept from me. The late-night phone calls he never explained. The meetings he brushed off with a smile. The times he told me, "Don't worry about it, I've got it handled." I had always trusted him, believed his reassurances. And now, sitting in a restaurant, with a poisoned glass of wine that had been meant for him, I realized just how much he had hidden. The waitress appeared again, moving quickly, balancing a tray to disguise the way her hands shook. She bent down just slightly as though clearing my plate, her voice a whisper barely audible over the clatter of dishes. "You shouldn't be here. You need to go before she realizes you know." "Tell me why," I demanded, my voice low but sharp. "Tell me why my brother." Her lips pressed together, fear flickering across her face. She shook her head at first, but then, as though the weight of silence was crushing her, she let the words escape in a rush. He owes them money, a lot more than he could ever repay. My sister, she agreed to settle it in another way. To make sure he never had the chance to repay it at all. The world tilted again, my brother debt. I had known he was reckless, but this was something darker. If what she said was true, he hadn't just borrowed money. He had borrowed from people who didn't forgive. People who erased debts not by collecting money, but by erasing the debtor entirely. And that's when it hit me, the man outside. The one with the calm demeanor wasn't just muscle. He was a collector, the kind who didn't come for payment, but for silence. I felt sick. My stomach twisted with betrayal and fear all at once. My brother had dragged me into this without ever saying a word, by sitting at his table, by choosing his seat. I had become the pawn in a game I hadn't even known was being played. The waitress's eyes brimmed with tears. Please leave. She sees us talking again. I can't protect you. I wanted to demand more, to scream for answers. But I knew she was right. My time was up. Any longer in that building, and I would be marked too. I stood, my legs heavy, and left the restaurant. The rain had stopped, but the streets glistened under the glow of the lamps, reflecting a world that now felt foreign to me. My breath fogged in the cold night as I walked quickly, each step echoing the truth I had just uncovered, that it wasn't about me, was never about me. But now was, because by hearing the truth, by surviving the trap that had been meant for my brother, I had made myself part of the story. And if they thought I would stay silent, they were wrong. As I reached the corner, I turned once more to look at the restaurant, its warm lights glowing innocently as if nothing sinister had just unfolded inside. I knew better. I knew now that danger wasn't always obvious. Sometimes it sat in a glass of wine. Sometimes it waited in the form of a stranger's hand on your shoulder. And sometimes it wore the face of someone you thought you could trust. And to you listening right now, let me leave you with this: pay attention to the little things, to the instincts you're tempted to ignore. Because sometimes the only warning you'll ever get is a trembling hand slipping you a note when you least expect it. If you made it here, don't forget, hit the like button and subscribe. Because stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're reminders. And the truth, as I learned that night, can save your life.